Be very few women who've really alienated people the way that, of course, this particular lady has done. I mean, when you think about it, she created headlines, newsreels, and more shockingly, of course, kind of rocked a constitution, a monarchy. Everybody was blaming her. But when you look at her story at this particular point now, it seems rather tame, literally, as ever. Let me explain. Morning, nice to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join me today. Yes, we're talking about this lady. I bet you thought we were talking about the other one, but the Duchess of Windsor, Wallis Simpson. Now, I've been lucky enough to actually meet quite a few people that got to know her in a latter part of her life. And fascinating when you think about it, because, everybody's divided about Wallis Simpson. I kind of look at it this way. The film actor James Mason and his wife at the time, Pamela Mason, were quite chummy with the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and she used to have quite a few parties that they attended. And according to well-placed sources who spoke with him, it wasn't really the sort of marriage or anything that really people assumed. Wallis felt incredibly trapped, but realised that she couldn't take any more backlash if she decided that she either wanted to divorce or move on from him. Now, we know the inner story, don't we, about how the Duke was absolutely besotted. Whatever she wanted, she had to have. A familiar ring to that story, right? And of course, basically, he was ostracised, never really allowed back in the inner circle of the British monarchy. When you look at the story, you can understand why. But also when you look at the story, it's rather tame in today's world. That's because, of course, standards and things move on. On this week, the Duchess of Windsor sadly passed away, well into her 80s, and apparently still very sharp and still very glamorous to the end, but apparently also very sad at the life that she'd been forced to lead. You see, what it occurs, and this is what I find fascinating, is the people, as I say, around her, even when sadly the Duke had passed away in the early 70s, she couldn't really have the life that she wanted, because all the time, the only thing that she got asked about was the monarchy and indeed the late Duke. She felt as trapped as he may have felt when he didn't want to become king without her by his side. The reason why I bring this story up is it's an interesting thing, isn't it, in the world of history. We all think we know the story, but the real story, according to people who knew her, who I, as I say, was lucky enough to meet, was that Wallis was a woman who really just lived in the moment, enjoyed the lifestyle, the cafe society, the glitz, the glamour, the money, never thought that it would lead to such a constraining life where she really would be put on a pedestal and made to actually adhere to what one person truly wanted. Yes, she had fame. Yes, to a point she had riches, but she wasn't wealthy as the way that people felt. When she was finally invited back to Buckingham Palace at the demise, of course, of the Duke of Windsor, it was all too late for her. She wasn't bitter against the Queen Mother, whatever people feel. What she basically felt was she didn't realise what she was getting into. And truly what's emerged, having spoken to people who literally were working with her towards the end, she never really stopped loving her husband, Ernest Simpson. And that really was the true tragedy. So when you think about Wallis on this week, who sadly passed away and still remains a big light in the royal history, it just goes to show that whatever people think, there's always another side to the story, another side behind the headlines that we only know. And for Wallis Simpson, this was nothing like the royal life that she had been promised, or indeed she could have possibly perceived. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.